before we start. One is that all questions will come at the end of the speeches, so kindly don't interrupt. And then also, number two, if you're attending the press conference, we kindly request that you hush, that you maintain silence. And number three, speeches. We're keeping our speeches at 5 minutes in the interest of time. So, 5 minutes. And register. If you're a journalist, a media person, kindly register. If you haven't, please register. The registration desk is over there on the left side of this tent. Register and get a copy of the press release and other documents. Great. Without further ado, I'll invite Mr. Dennis Aguma, who is the team leader and the founder of NASE, who will tell us more about the IDEAthon, this initiative, and then he will invite a representative from UNDP, Mr. Ashley Pringent. Yes, and then after that we'll have questions, and we will wrap up the session as quick as we can. Well, thank you very much, and over to you, Dennis.
Thank you very much, Manana, and thank you very much all the press people that have been able to make the journey here to Entebbe. Thank you very much for joining us. I think as Manana mentioned, my name is Aguma Dennis. I'm the founder and executive director for NASE Africa. NASE Africa is a social enterprise that was set up in 2015, initially to support startups and students, typically in universities and vocational institutions, to be entrepreneurial. And of course, Uganda is well known to be a very entrepreneurial country, but somehow most of our businesses don't make it past their first year, second year, let alone 5 years. So the other issue that was apparent, and is still apparent when we are talking about skills, is that typically our young people are joining the world of work when they're not prepared for the world of work. And we have found, not just us as NASE, but there's a lot of research suggesting that entrepreneurship skills are really the kind of lifelong skills that most of these young people will need. They include things like action, being able to take action. They include things like being able to communicate. They include things like being able to negotiate, to be innovative, to take risks and things like that. And when we initially started, we thought that the best way to do that, to sort out this skills issue, is to deal with the issue at source, which was within technical and vocational institutions, higher education institutions, or even secondary schools, essentially before these young people join the world of work. And doing that, we were able to engage a number of universities and help set up enterprise or entrepreneurship societies or clubs or business clubs or commerce clubs. And the purpose of that is to give them the kind of activities and the opportunities to enable them pick up on some of these skills, because some of these skills can be acquired in extracurricular fashion. So by participating in things and working with the likes of Makerere University Business School or Makerere University, the Cobham's College of Business, for instance, there is a co-curricular approach to entrepreneurship education where, for instance, you have over 3,000 students, Instead of learning about entrepreneurship, they learn for entrepreneurship. They actually go out there and create real products, test them, come up with prototypes, and demonstrate them. And in the process of doing that, the student does not just have a qualification or pass the module around entrepreneurship, but actually has real skills that they can take into the world of work. Some of them come up with brilliant ideas that they then go on to implement. So part of what we were doing within universities and higher education institutions got us noticed by the United Nations Development Program, and they asked us to deliver what we call the Youth Ideathon. It started typically in lockdown, everything was shut down, and the United Nations Development Program, and I'll let my colleague talk about a number of their programs, had quite a number of programs that they were running around the supporting youth, typically, but they were focusing mainly at that time on businesses that are registered, perhaps over 12 months old, with a bank account. So these tend to be established organizations. But with lockdown and all businesses crumbling, there was need to inspire young people especially to venture into creating solutions in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, the Youth Ideathon started around that period with a huge media campaign. Most of you will have been aware of it. I see NBS here. We were in your studios, and TV, and very many others, on radio, newspapers, and social media, rallying young people to not despair in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, but to embrace the challenge and come up with real solutions that are addressing Uganda's needs as per the National Development Plan number 3. And in the process of that media campaign, we attracted over 4,800 brilliant ideas. And any of you who might have come here earlier, the kind of ideas that these guys have are incredible. Brilliant ideas that are using the state-of-the-art technology around machine learning, around artificial intelligence, around and addressing even very many sectors: agriculture, tourism, health, minerals and mineral development. I could go on and on. Brilliant ideas. So what started initially by the UNDP to identify 100 businesses with a target of 1,000, here we were with 4,800 brilliant business ideas. So we had an independent judging process where we had over 60 judges, and each judge was looking, every idea was being looked at by at least 2 different individuals. So there was an element, huge element of fairness, but even then we managed to get the top 1,000 ideas. And that was the NASE Africa team doing that, together with our judges and mentors, and we had a huge network of those. And after that, we then approached the United Nations Development Program and said, here we are, we have the top 1,000. What do we do with them? First and foremost, the UNDP had a target of 100, so the first task was to whittle down to 100. So there was another judging process, which we called adjudication, where together with the UNDP, NASE and the UNDP teams went through the ideas to identify the top 100. So what you're seeing here today is that group, those are the top 100 ideas from the Youth Ideathon. The names, I think, were published in the newspaper, the Monitor, and the New Vision. I can't quite remember the actual date, but my colleague should be able to give you a list of all those that participated. So today here we have the top 100. And why are we doing the bootcamp? There are very many entrepreneurship competitions that are happening in Uganda. And there are also very many government programs that focus on giving people money. But we wanted, together with the UNDP, to take a holistic approach. And some of these young people are very young. One of the participants is in his O-level vacation, would you believe? And his idea is in the top 100. We have university students that have never held 100 million shillings. You don't just give them 100 million shillings. It's not the most sustainable or efficient or effective way of supporting a young person. Most of these young people come from families where they've never aspired to be entrepreneurs. Perhaps no one has ever inspired them. So we wanted to have a program that inspires them, that challenges them, that gives them a hand along the way. That money is the last thing, really, that is of significance. What matters most is that incubation process. So the media campaign was to identify them. Then we had what we called thematic sessions, where we, using different key individuals and experts in various sectors, we were able to inspire them through a series of thematic sessions each day, focusing on agriculture, focusing on ICT, focusing on tourism. And from that, people were then able to identify how different their ideas were, what they could do differently from what is being done at the moment, and they submitted their ideas. And then we had, after that, what we call master classes. So if you're in business school or if you studied business, it's very easy for you to know the difference between profit and loss. It's very different for you. You may have come across things like business model canvases. You may have ever pitched your idea, for instance, if you did a course at university and included entrepreneurship. You may have had that opportunity, but very many people had actually never even seen these business model canvases. So we taught them the basic fundamentals of entrepreneurship, the key things like what problem are you trying to solve? And how does your solution fit into that? Who are you targeting? What are your customer segments? How are you getting your product to these individuals? What are the key activities that you need to do for your product to get to these individuals? What are the cost implications of that? Are we making any money, profit or loss? Who are the key partners that you need? So some basic fundamentals, and these individuals were able to complete their canvases and upload them onto our independent digital platform that we built for them. And then the judges obviously had to judge those. Over the course of the last few weeks as well, we have managed to get them to submit their pitch, their videos, where they've been on their own submitting the videos. And during this boot camp, we have inspired them, and I think you're welcome to interview a number of them once you get a chance. The key word here, which is often misused, is mindset. The entrepreneurial mindset is different from a typical academic mindset. And here we've been able to unlock that X factor within their mind, the fact that they are able to believe that they can actually do it. The tools and the techniques that typical entrepreneurs use in places like Silicon Valley and London and others. And there's no reason why Uganda cannot be producing the likes of Serunjoji of Cheaper Cash, who are out there showcasing some of Uganda's brightest ideas. So we're on a mission to identify these ideas, to enliven these ideas. And while today we are going to identify who of these individuals is going to win the 100 million shillings, really it's not about the money. It's about giving them a chance, believing in them, and hand-holding them for the next 3 months, from January up to the end of March, as part of our business incubation program, where we are going to partner them with mentors and connect them with the various sectors and industry players where they need to be. And we think that is the most sustainable way. We're doing a holistic approach. Perhaps one of the other things that we are talking to our development partners, the UNDP, about is we are seeing that some of these individuals, their ideas are so advanced, they need much more than 100 million shillings. You know, if you're in the West, chances are that there's a lot of money around from venture capitalists and others to support your business. But that is not the culture in Uganda. Typically, people invest in their own businesses, maybe in their sons. So we are rallying people out there that have money to start taking a chance and a bet on these individuals. They have brilliant ideas, and they could make you the next millionaire along the way. While the initial investment might appear very small to you, it's a very big thing for some of these young people. So I would encourage and call upon people to start thinking about startups as an avenue for investment, just like you would look at land. And what we're doing with NASE and with the support from the UNDP and as part of the IDEAthon, we have done all the heavy work for you. We have identified these individuals. We have prepared them before we even give them your money. And the UNDP has put some money aside, so they have de-risked the possibility of this guy failing. We, as part of our incubation, are also going to give you a hand, so we have also de-risked. So there's an opportunity to identify brilliant ideas, invest in them when they're still very early, and reap rewards when these businesses become bigger. We're also making a rallying call for financial institutions to really focus on startups as well. The vast majority of them focus on SMEs that are already established or big corporations, and they miss out on the opportunity of growing with these young individuals. If nothing else, as part of your corporate social responsibility, please make a deliberate effort to reach out to these young individuals. We want to see products that are tailored for startups. The interest rates that we're seeing from commercial banks, I wouldn't want to use words like ridiculous, but it's impossible in a startup to borrow at 20% and so on and so forth when you're trying things out, when cash is very important. So we want the banks to reach out, and we've had some discussions with a number of banks, and hopefully we get to a situation where there is consensus within the financial services for the need to support startups. Lastly, but by no means least, is that Uganda is dealing with a huge unemployment problem. Yet, it has one of the perfect populations any country could ever want. Very young population, the vast majority in their prime, and yet most of them are unemployed. Who creates jobs? It's not government. It's the private sector. It's the entrepreneurs. So we need a critical mass of young people starting businesses. And if you look at our demographics, the vast majority of our young people are still in schools and universities and technical and vocational institutions. So that is the background of how we came into existence. We call upon development partners, government, the private sector, to come and join our rallying call to inspire and equip our young people with the kind of entrepreneurship skills that they're going to need to start the next revolution of entrepreneurship. Something is happening in Africa in terms of enterprise and entrepreneurship, and Uganda is prime positioned in terms of our demographics to take advantage of things like the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. But we can't do it alone. And on this particular note, I would like to thank our partners, the United Nations Development Program, without whom we would not have done this. Specifically, the Accelerator Lab team at the UNDP, who have who take a chance on experimenting with things. You know, this IDEAthon is not the format that the kind of programs that they typically do, but they took a chance with us, and we have co-created and evolved and stumbled in one way or the other upon what we think is a perfect business incubation funnel that we hope to use to unleash the next potential for the next biggest entrepreneurs in Uganda. I thank you. Ashley.
Thank you everyone for being here. My name's Ashley Pridgent with the United Nations Development Program. We're obviously here today and this week for the Youth Ideathon, and specifically to congratulate and celebrate and draw more from the 100 winners of the Youth Ideathon. Very encouragingly, from the start and from when this open call was advertised, we had over 4,800 submissions. I know this was really difficult to whittle down to 1,000 submissions, and now finally the top 100, the winners of the Youth Ideathon, have all been invited this week to receive business mentorship, take part in business workshops, have the opportunity to nurture their idea with some experts in their respective fields, and also to pitch their ideas and tighten their pitches for future opportunities for investment. I guess firstly, we'd like to really thank the 100 winners and congratulate the 100 winners for participating in the Youth Ideathon. This is the first iteration of the Youth Ideathon, but also congratulate and thank the over 4,800 participants who submitted an idea in the first place. And I'm sure in future, between NASE Africa and UNDP, there may be an opportunity to nurture these ideas as well. But really, we're here today for the Youth Ideathon, which is all about unearthing the next generation of entrepreneurs in Uganda from the startup level. We know that Uganda has an incredibly youthful population and a very fast-growing population. I think it's 78% of the population of Uganda is under the age of 30. We also know that the unemployment rate among youth is quite high. And the Youth Ideathon for UNDP, it's one of a number of initiatives that UNDP are using to invest in youth innovation and entrepreneurship, to encourage job creation, to encourage livelihood opportunities, to enable youth through skilling and mentorship and training to enter the entrepreneurship ecosystem and enter the business market and be competitive, and also to create a flow-on effect of jobs for more youth and for other vulnerable groups like women as well. And I think we really need to focus on the gender aspect of the Youth Ideathon and make sure we continue to create opportunities for women in Uganda to enter that entrepreneurship space as well. As I mentioned, the Youth Ideathon is just one of a number of initiatives that UNDP is using to empower youth through entrepreneurship and innovation. The UNDP Youth for Business Innovation and Entrepreneurship Facility was launched in 2019 for businesses that are already established, over 1 year of age, and have entered the marketplace. This has been in partnership with Stanbic Bank. Now the Youth Ideathon initiative, which is the partnership between NASE Africa and UNDP, is looking at those really early stage startup ideas that could maybe feed into the Youth for Business facility in the future, but just need some mentorship and some support through grants as well to get their entrepreneurial careers really started, and to form the next generation of micro, small and medium enterprises, and I guess encourage economic growth as well in Uganda, and inclusive economic growth, since the focus is on youth. UNDP are also supporting Open Creatives Call to encourage growth of the creative sector in Uganda, because this cannot be ignored as well, and it's another opportunity for economic growth. And also investing heavily in tourism, in trade, with a focus on youth as being conduits for growth in these sectors as well through other initiatives. Specifically, the Youth Ideathon, it's brought together by NASE Africa and UNDP, but specifically the UNDP Uganda Accelerator Lab, which is part of a network of accelerator labs around the world. I think there's over 90 labs now. It's a growing network. And the ethos behind the Accelerator Lab network is to come up with innovative solutions to complex development challenges that are relevant in the 21st century, and to really rethink and keep fast on our feet in how we tackle complex development challenges. So the Accelerator Lab team has really been pushing this alongside Mr. Dennis Aguma and the team at NASE Africa on the Youth Ideathon. And we're really eager to see, we've just had a pitching session of the top 30 from the 4,800 who submitted. We're now going to, today, I think, decide the top 10 and eventually whittle that down to the ultimate winner of the Youth Ideathon, who will take home 100 million Uganda shillings. But I think that's all from me. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ashley. I think we, at this stage, can welcome questions.
Yes. Thank you very much. We are open for questions now, and my microphone will be passing round. Please tell us your name and the media house that you represent, and then ask your question. Thank you.
My name is Angurini. I work with the Daily Monitor. Recently, the government gave 200 billion shillings to support SMEs that have suffered due to this COVID pandemic. And they were charging, most of the commercial banks were charging some amount percentage for these people, SMEs who are going to access this money. They are charging some interest. In your case, are you going to also charge the winner of this 100 million shillings people? When are they going to repay it back to you? And I wanted to know, you said 100 people they are winners. Is it that every 100 of them will walk away with 100 million?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, each one of these is a winner. They will each take at least $5,000 US, which is around 18 million shillings. And I can tell you, in the startup space, particularly in Uganda, it's a lot of money. You could make significant progress with that. So we're very grateful for the UNDP for making these funds available. In terms of the interest, if I understand you correctly, in fact, some of the discussions we're having with the commercial banks are that this money, we would love that all of it goes to the individual. So we're already talking to a number of banks to make sure that when the grants are disbursed to these individual accounts, that the banks are opening up special accounts for these individuals. If you, and I can tell you, having lived and worked in the UK for a while, supporting startups and SMEs on the other side, there are products that some of these banks have where if you're opening up a business account, you have perhaps 2 or 3 years grace period where you aren't paying some of these exorbitant charges, and they can easily add up to a significant amount or a significant part of your grant. But we are making very good progress in terms of the discussions that we've had. I'm not at liberty to disclose which banks we have spoken to or we're still talking to. But suffice to say, your point is duly, is valid in that is one of the key things that we're talking to the banks about, that these grants, the banks should not skim anything off it. Far from it, they should add more money in the pot, so to speak. I don't know whether Ashley wants to say something about this.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, I guess a number of the figures can't really be disclosed at this moment, but the question brought up a really good point that micro, small and medium enterprises have really suffered during COVID-19. And I guess there needs to be a real focus on generating the resilience to economic shocks of certain enterprises. And I guess that's a part of the Youth Ideathon challenge and the mentorship that we have through this initiative. We're not working specifically with established MSMEs, but the next generation of MSMEs, and hopefully they'll be better equipped for future challenges.
Thank you very much. My name is Nelson Mandela Mhos from New Vision. My question is, as you've interacted with startups and a number of youth in your experience, what do you find lacking in our education system, particularly Uganda, that makes entrepreneurship quite a risky venture? Because we are praised to be one of the most entrepreneurial country, but our startups, our companies do not last longer, most times than 2 years. What's the problem? What isn't the education system providing to us? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's $1 million question that the government ought to be answering, but I can have a stab at it based on my personal experience. And I'm sure you will agree with me that when we went to school, really hardly were we trained to be entrepreneurs. You went to school hopefully to become a doctor, to become a lawyer, to become an engineer, to become an architect. We were never really meant to go to school to start our own enterprises. You hope that when you graduate, you get a job. That's the kind of mindset and mentality. Indeed, our education system was designed, whoever designed it, to do exactly that, to produce the doctors that the economy needs, to produce the engineers that the economy needs. But we've figured out that you can produce all the engineers, but if there are no jobs for them, then you're really not doing as much. So the education system has a lot to blame for, but I understand there's a lot of work happening to change the curriculum. One of the things I'm very passionate about, and some of the stuff that I'm researching about, is the effect or the impact of co-curricular activities within schools, technical and vocational institutions, including universities. Their impact. There is some anecdotal research suggesting that they could be more effective in preparing young minds and skilling them for enterprise and entrepreneurship. If you're a member of a student society, for instance, like the Entrepreneurship Society, the fact that you are engaged in activities, you're learning how to communicate, you are building and working in teams, you're being innovative in how you approach particular challenges and solutions. Yet you're there for only 3 years to do a degree and go back home. So there's an opportunity to approach education in a co-curricular fashion, so that while you're studying about entrepreneurship, you're also coming up with a product and service, so that you're not just studying theoretical stuff that you can regurgitate at the end of your graduation and hopefully get a job. No, you want that by the time that student leaves university, leaves the technical and vocational institution, that they're not just going to be a carpenter, but that they're setting up the next Malaysia furniture store of authentically Ugandan products, or steel, or iron ore, or tiles, So I think a lot has to do with, and I'm not suggesting that we should break down the entire curriculum. No, if you're employing an engineer, you better hope that he can put up a solid structure. Those fundamentals need to stay. But alongside that, could we do more in a co-curricular fashion to equip these young people with entrepreneurial skills? One of the things I would add as well is, I think also goes back to the parents themselves, who pressure their children to do particular courses, yet the son is very passionate about compost manure, and they actually want to pursue that. Or the son is very passionate about art and fine art. Actually spoke very briefly about the Creatives Call that the UNDP has put out there. And the creative industry is one of those biggest industries. Just to give you an example, if, say, Eddie Kenzo was to hold a show, it's not just Eddie Kenzo being paid. Today, for instance, the setup is by Silk Events. They have to be paid. They employ a number of people that have to be paid. The TV crew that is here has to be paid just from one event. We are in a hotel, they have to be paid. They have to pay maids, not necessarily maids, waiters, waitresses, you know. They have to buy food. The food has to be bought from the local. So the industry gains a lot from just that one guy who has a show. And he's just a creative guy. And that's just a musician. I could go on with artists and, you know, movie industries. If you think of Hollywood, Nollywood, Bollywood, huge industries now. Recently, Ali Lukman, if you know about him, his movie is now showing on Netflix. Those are the kind of things we want to be doing. And yet, when we were growing up, if you went into a disco and you're busy playing music all the time, people would be like, you're not being serious. I was in drama. I went to Mbara High School and I was part of the drama club. I was actually its chairman. I can guarantee you, looking back with hindsight, I think my ability to stand in front of people and pitch or talk to you guys, I honed that skill by being part of the drama club. And yet, my parents were not very keen on my engagements in drama club because they thought I was not being serious. And somehow I was picking up some of those skills. So I would also implore, I think, the parents to let the children follow their dreams. Obviously, studying is very important, but if you're lucky that your son or daughter has identified another thing that they're interested in and passionate about, support them. Because the jobs of the future, I was reading a report recently, that about 70% of the jobs that our children are going to be doing in 30 years from now have not been created. So how do you prepare our children to play in that market? Social media was not as big as it was just 20 years ago. And now we have social media analysts, we have influencers, people living off this kind of stuff. So we need to be relaxed a bit about the things that our young people get involved in and let them create the future that they deserve. Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, if there are no more questions, we have a question. Can I have a microphone over there? While you prepare to ask your question, I'd also like to ask. Somebody mentioned about the loopholes in the education system, and that the product of our education system is the people that we have today who are fundamentally lacking in entrepreneurial skills. Hence the reason to train people and expose our young people to entrepreneurship ventures. So doesn't it make sense to invest in the education system so that the education system produces the entrepreneurs? Isn't it more sustainable as opposed to investing in the entrepreneurs directly?
Thank you very much, Manana. I can respond to that very quickly. And it's the same thing with business incubation and things like that. When people talk about investing in education, they think typical of physical infrastructure. And while that is good, it's really the soft stuff that happens within the schools that is as important. Apart from the standard curriculum of biology, physics, chemistry, the manner in which that is delivered is very important. The opportunities that these people have, the young people have to experiment with things is equally very important. So I agree with you that it's very important to invest in the education system, but it requires something maybe on a Marshall scale, so to speak, because the vast majority of Ugandans are actually in school, if you think about it. And yet, even if you were to increase the space in terms of the physical space, you may still not do enough. We need to be supporting teachers, perhaps giving them some of the skills to deliver the kind of stuff that we want to see happening in schools. But entrepreneurship skills, by and large, there is a practical element that needs to be included within the curriculum. And that's why we're talking about co-curricular or even extracurricular activities. We think that they are the missing ingredient in terms of equipping young people with entrepreneurship skills.
Thank you. My name is Abel. I was here wondering about some of these ideas, like these 100 people. Can you share for me some picture of some of these ideas?
Interesting. The one that comes off the top of my head is one who have already secured intellectual property. So the others, I may not give you much information, just in case and for obvious reasons. But one of them, and I won't tell you the name, so you'll know that, for instance, a lot of waste in agriculture. I think about 40% of agriculture produce is wasted, either at farm level or as soon as the stuff leaves the farm, or even if you have a supermarket and you buy your tomatoes, if they don't get sold and they go off, it's loss for everyone. This is a bigger problem, actually, not even just in Uganda, globally. There's big supermarkets in Europe spend a lot of money trying to bring in so much stuff, and most of it gets wasted. Even people, when they buy stuff at home, if Yaka goes off, your fresh produce actually disappears. So what tends to happen is that they use chemicals to preserve this kind of stuff. So one of the ideas from one of the guys here is they have come up with a way of using fruits, and I think looking at their the skin, managing to get some kind of organic stuff that preserves the fruit and extends its shelf life. And they have intellectual property here. And apparently they're the first ones on the African continent, would you believe? So this has huge potential to save Uganda over $10 million worth of food that would have been wasted. If you're exporting Ugandan products to Dubai and the other markets and they are reaching there when they are not in very good condition, Uganda is losing money. And these guys are coming up with an organic way of extending the shelf life. If you're sending your products to the European market and you're using chemicals, they will not allow you to sell. And these guys are coming up with an ingenious way of sorting out our produce. So in a way, it's not just a simple idea of selling Rolex. No, this is something that has potential. And especially if you think of Uganda, about 60% of us are involved in agriculture. And we are a country that is exporting fresh produce. This has huge potential. And I would encourage you guys, once you get a chance to speak to one of these individuals, I think Manana can help you identify some of these individuals. So the ideas are brilliant. I think we've been blown away by them. Last night, our whole team was judging them up to almost midnight because these guys were still pitching up until that time. The ideas are brilliant. I think from next year, you will be able to hear more about these ideas, especially as we're filming all of them and they'll be available in some kind of TV show.
Maybe this is the last one from me. People usually say that the grave is the richest place, simply because that many ideas, are lying there. People have brilliant ideas, but they have died with them without actualizing them. So you've done a tremendous work in identifying these ideas from different individuals, the youth. But I need to get this clearly. You've only chosen 100. What is going to happen with the 900? Who is going to take them up? Are you going to help them, in future, or is there a plan for these 900 ideas? Thank you very much.
Yes, that's a very good question, and thanks in part or hugely to the United Nations Development Program, because previously the idea was to identify just 100 businesses, which we have. However, in the process of attempting to identify the 100, we were overwhelmed by the huge volume, and we had to get to a stage where the top 1,000, once we had presented the results to the UNDP and had subsequent meetings with the Accelerator Lab colleagues, including the resident representative, Madame Elsie Atafu, the UNDP decided we can't just let these guys like that. So they have agreed to support NASE to incubate these individuals. So even though they have not necessarily won a grant, they are going to receive incubation support that includes mentorship, that includes guidance, that helps them to perfect the idea. You can speak to the guys who are here that in just a few days that they've been here, they have moved bounds. And you can tell from the videos that they submitted before they came and the ones that they've submitted right now, there's a huge and obvious difference. And it's not just the ability to stand and pitch. No, it's the networks and the connections that they're making, It's the belief in themselves that they can actually do it. All that is part of business incubation package that will be available to the other 900. So all the 1,000 will be part of our incubation cohort. Unless you want to add something.
No, I think Dennis has summed it up really well. And obviously now, both NASE Africa and UNDP are aware of these 4,800 budding young entrepreneurs, and obviously support couldn't be given to everyone, but I'm sure that NASE in particular will keep a close eye on everyone who submitted an idea.
Actually, it's not even just the 1,000. As I mentioned earlier, there are discussions still happening. So what we're doing is the early part of what they call a business incubation funnel, the space through which these ideas come. So what do we do with them? This is another rallying call to other players within the space. Indeed, we're having discussions with quite a number of other spaces where there would be funnels opened up for these individuals, for these organizations, for these businesses. One of which is what Ashley mentioned about the creatives sector. It's a huge sector that has huge potential. So the UNDP has actually deliberately opened up, I wouldn't call it a desk, but there's a whole deliberate movement in that direction. And we're having some discussion with some of the players to see how we can support the creatives. We are talking to other organizations, such as, I don't want to go into names, to open up pipelines where these individuals could actually be heading out. But also as NASE Africa, we are not just focusing on these other 1,000. Those other 4,800, all of them are on our database. We know who they are. It's just that we've been overwhelmed by this particular cohort and want to deal with this one first. But we will be reaching out to each and every one of those in due course with a view of sending them in the right direction.
You talked about you're talking to commercial banks to add up, not to take away from
Correct.
these young entrepreneurs.
Correct.
Now, do you have government banking, or you're just doing this on your own? Because, I mean, commercial banks, without the interest rates, they don't make money. They have come to do business. Have you ever tried to talk to government, since you have development partners backing? Is government supporting your idea? Because maybe you should have talked to Bank of Uganda, which regulates these commercial banks in this country. Yeah. Have you tried to engage government to support you?
That's a very good question. I think from the activities that we're doing, it will become apparent and obvious to government that they will have to intervene in this space to support not just young entrepreneurs, but micro and very small, medium-sized enterprises. It is obvious. Everyone knows that the interest rates are really, really very high. But I want to encourage you that the discussions we're having with these banks have actually been very positive. And we've been pleasantly surprised by the positiveness within which they have welcomed the kind of discussions. They are very much aware of the corporate social responsibility. They are very much aware that if a startup starts here in Uganda and is banking with you and ends up becoming the most profitable startup on the African continent, they are also there to gain as well. So the discussions we're having are actually very good discussions. They haven't materialized yet, and we'll continue to have them. In terms of lobbying, I think that is one of the things that the United Nations Development Program, which is one of the biggest partners for the government of Uganda, is very good at and is doing. I've been on the periphery of some discussions where the UNDP has made a rallying call and tried to get government to sit on the round table to talk about some of these things. I remember recently when we had the whole few days around the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, where you had the permanent secretaries from the Ministry of Trade. So these discussions are already happening by the UNDP, and the UNDP engages very heavily with government. So I think our role as NASE is to be part of those discussions and share the views and opinions of our young people and their desires and aspirations, and highlight some of the challenges and continue to lobby. But ultimately, the ball is in the government's court. I can't do very much about it other than to shout off the top of my voice that these interest rates really have to come down. But I think the UNDP is doing an excellent job in terms of engaging government on some of these bottlenecks. Ashley, do you want to say something about this?
Thanks, Dennis. Just to say that obviously investing in socioeconomic growth and progress requires a multi-sector approach. No one actor or ministry or development partner can conduct this on their own, and obviously the government of Uganda is doing a lot. Dennis made a really good point about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, the AFCFTA, and in the coming years there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Uganda's labour market to, I guess, have bilateral, multilateral agreements regionally across Africa, and that's sure to, I think it's been projected to significantly increase economic growth in Uganda as well. Sorry, I don't have the figures, but I think the AFCFTA is something that's definitely on the government's radar, on the Ministry of Trade's radar, as an opportunity to drive economic growth in that sector.
And just to supplement on that, it's impossible for our startups to compete on the African continent if the cost of capital is as ridiculously expensive as it is at the moment. But thank goodness for the UNDP with the grants. We hope that these will go a long way in setting some of these startups up for success.
Thank you very much. Time check is 14:56. For journalists and media people who didn't come with recording devices, you can access this on the NASE Africa YouTube channel. That is NASE Africa. Also, we have media houses that from the Luganda-speaking audience, for the Luganda-speaking audience. And Dennis, we would like you to tell us something about the IDEAthon briefly in Luganda, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you very much, Dennis.
You're welcome. That's an interesting one.
And Ashley, if you would like as well, the floor is open. You can tell us something as well in Uganda, but for now.
Yes, I think it is not news. Bachiga are not very good at speaking Luganda. Nainja gezaako. Eno bagita Youth Ideathon. Bakwano baffe aba United Nations Development Program nga tukyali mu COVID yawo baatuyita ne bagamba lwaki temutuyambako bano ba youth baffe abaana abato abali eka nga tebalina mirimu naye nga balina ideas tubayambako tutya. Kati ffe NASE Africa kyetukola kuyamba abaana abato especially nga bakyali mu secondary schools mu universities tubayamba ng'olina ekirowoozo kyo nga kya business gye bayita idea tukuyamba okukimuvinga from just mu bwongo mu mutwe gwo ne tukuyamba ne tukuwa amagezi engeri gy'onookitambuzaamu n'okimuvinga ne kigenda mu katale. Kati tulina wano abavubuka bangi nnyo kumpi 10 be twakolanga nabo mu COVID lockdown nga tubawa amagezi nga tubayamba ne tuba inspiring kwegamba ne tusisimusa obwongo bwabwe kwegamba idea zaabwe ne zivaayo. Kati UNDP yasazeemu bayamba negamba bana abavubuka balina ideas abalina ebirowoozo bwe biti nga birungi tujja bayamba tubaweeko ku busente era kati wetwogerera abavubuka 10 bwe tubadde nabo wano buli omu at least ajja genda eka nga tutandise incubation program ne $15,000 ezo ziri kumpi $18,000,000 naye kwabo waliwo abalala abalina ebirowoozo nga byamaanyi nnyo kwegamba nga ekirowoozo naawe n'okitundamu n'ogamba kino kijja kgenda Africa yonna kiteeke Uganda ku mulembe bano abavubuka bajja kukola sente nnyingi gavumenti bajja kuemployinga abantu bangi bajja bawa emirimu URA ejja collectinga sente bintu bwe bito nga kwegamba olabira ddala nti eno idea nnungi nnyo kwabo omu ajja kugenda eka ne million 10 ziyinza okulabika nga sente nnyingi naye ebirowoozo abavubuka bano bibayina ebisinga bijja kwetaaga sente nnyingi kubanga baagala kugenda si mu Uganda yokka balowooza ku Africa yonna. So bw'obanga okola product oba service ng'ogisendinga Ghana ng'ogisendinga Nigeria ng'ogisendinga South Africa nga wakatandika oba weetaaga sente nnyingi. So ezo million 10 tweyaniriza nnyo era tusiimye nnyo abakwano baffe abatusupporting aba United Nations Development Program okusinzira ddala Accelerator Lab abataddeho zino esente zigenda okuyamba bano abantu kumpi $60,000 okukakana nga tuziwadde abavubuka bano. So tetujja bawa sente ne tubaleka tujja kubeera nabo mu kye tuyita incubation kwegamba omuntu n'omuyambako n'omukwatirako nga yagala someone amuweeko ku magezi ne tumugamba kati genda oyogere n'oli oli mukugu kubanga tulina abakugu abo mu programu yaffe nga NASE Africa. Eyo bagiyita mentorship tujja bawa mentorship tujja ba guiding tujja balaga ekkubo engeri idea gyabwe bwe banaagitambuzaamu. I think I've done really well in my Uganda.
Fantastic, you've done absolutely well. Thank you very much, Dennis.
Do I?
We've done-
That's refreshing.
We've done very well on time. Kindly share about this event on social media. On YouTube, we're at NASE Africa, and some of our on Twitter, our handle is NASE_Africa. Facebook, NASE Africa, and that is it. Well, thank you all for coming. We are done with this part of the program, and
I just wanted to say, before you wrap up, just to thank you guys for really coming and covering this story. Entrepreneurship is not the kind of sexy thing that people typically want to cover, you know. News have been, at least journalists often get bashed for glorifying negative stuff, and that's what you're covering, and that's what's making news. So the fact that you made an effort and came here and you're covering this, that's really, really very helpful, and we're very grateful for that. But I also don't want you to leave us. We will be following these stories, so every now and again, please get in touch with us and find out what's happening with these young people. Tell their stories, because an article that you publish about one of these businesses could be that article. I remember Amos Wekesa talking about an article that was published about a tourist that came, and Amos Wekesa gave him a tour. I think it was a he or a she, I can't quite remember. And this article was published in one of the newspapers in America. And very many people, before you knew it, were coming looking for this guy. And the rest, as they say, is history. So the media is very powerful, a very powerful part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem as a disseminator of information. So I thank you, and like to encourage that you carry on painting some of these pictures, because your work will inspire another guy, another guy, another guy. Thank you very much.
thank you very much. This is the Youth Ideathon 2021. Thanks to UNDP, we've been able to do this. Also to mention, tonight we have the grand finale, where we give out the 100 million shillings. For 3 days we've been here battling. 100 people have been battling and pitching for this money, and tonight we'll find out who the winner is. We'll take a break and be back here at 15 minutes after 2 o'clock, just to get our setup back to normal. Otherwise, thank you all for coming. If you haven't registered, kindly register at the registration desk. Leave us your information, because there are more documents we would like to send you on email. Thank you very much, and have a lovely afternoon. See you all at 2:15. Thanks. Also to mention that COVID is real, kindly maintain SOPs. And if you would like a mask, also go to the registration desk and pick yourself a mask for free. We also have sanitizer on the tables for you to use. You can take this away, it's for you. Thank you all, and see you at 2:15. Lastly, if you haven't had lunch, lunch is still open, and we'll be closing it in the next 15 minutes.